Johnny Torch with you again, kids. Well, it's kind of a lazy Sunday afternoon, and I'm pretty tired, but I've got nothing better to do than to give you the news. You lucky people. I'm here with my piping hot cup of green tea and my decorative Star Wars mug, so settle in. And so here we go. First up, Ewan Mcgregor was recently asked about the possibility of doing a Solo Obi-Wan Kenobi standalone movie, and thankfully, he seems very open to the possibility of doing one, going as far as to suggest an Obi-Wan trilogy. When pressed as to whether he had talks with Kathleen Kennedy about it, he laughed it off, saying, "I'm not at liberty to say." So it sounds to me like it's a done deal at this point. Nice to know Ewan McGregor is so eager to return to the role. Now I'm a big fan of the prequels, but like them or hate them, you have to admit Ewan McGregor was phenomenal as Obi-Wan Kenobi. I'm probably more excited about this than Episode 8, I kid you not. It begs the question, will the film take place entirely on Tatooine? It probably doesn't have to, but I think Obi-Wan should spend the majority of his time there. One of the things I hated about Attack of the Clones was there was no interaction between Obi-Wan and Uncle Owen. This would be a great place to set that right and show how the animosity between them got started. This could also be a good place to have the final showdown between him and Darth Maul. The only problem with that is you have to have a working knowledge of the Clone Wars cartoon to even know he's still alive. The layman probably doesn't even know he survived the Phantom Menace. I think Maul is set to appear on Rebels too, which might also be a sign he might not make it to the film. Probably old news now, but in a related story, Indiana Jones 5 is confirmed. Yes, Harrison Ford will don the hat for presumably the final time, with Steven Spielberg back to direct. No word on George Lucas' involvement, but since he's retired, it's pretty safe to say he won't be writing the story this time. I liked most of what Kingdom of the Crystal Skull had to offer. It was the weakest of the series, but still a pretty strong outing. It's anybody's guess whether Shia LaBeouf will return as Mutt, or if they'll recast, but obviously this is the movie to hand the hat over to Indy's successor, presumably his son. What do I want to see? Well, since Indy is married now, obviously Marion should come back. They should also try to get Sala, Short Round, and maybe a cameo of Willie Scott. They also need a strong artifact this time. What I don't want to see is Indy in the 60s. I think you could get away with him being in the 1950s, but the 60s is a whole nother ballgame, and they ought to avoid that. Supposedly, Warner's is making some hasty reshoots to Suicide Squad in an attempt to diffuse the notion that all DC movies will be about as much fun as an ingrown toenail. In a film with Harley Quinn and the Joker, I would think the film should be conducive to humor. We'll just have to wait and see. And we have a few photos out now of Benedict Cumberbatch as Doctor Strange shooting on the streets of New York. The photos also show Chiwetel Ejiofor, I hope I pronounced his name right, as Baron Mordo. Baron Mordo seems to be apparently a good guy for at least half this movie. The two appear to be doing battle with some unknown attackers. And finally we get our first look at a Voltron trailer for Netflix's upcoming Voltron, Legendary Defender. I was a big fan of Voltron back in the day, and it does disappoint me that they can't seem to get a decent reboot off the ground. It's the same thing as He-Man. The concept is a gold mine waiting to be struck, but nobody has brains enough to do anything with it up to now. Well, I'll get into Masters of the Universe another time. As for Voltron, there have been a few attempts to bring the concept back. In the late 90s, there was the CGI fest Voltron the Third Dimension, which was a so-so attempt to bring the show back in modern day. In more recent times, Voltron Force, which was more like a Next Generation series where 3 kids were chosen to be cadets in training to take over at least 3 of the Lions at some point. Unlike those shows, this new show from Netflix looks like a total reboot, but I'm okay with that. The original show was so cobbled together, this show has the benefit of getting it right without getting in trouble with standards and practices. Back in the day, I always thought Allura was in love with Lance, because they always recycled that same ending of her kissing Lance on the balcony in front of a cheering crowd. In reality, they just needed to fill time after editing the heck out of the show to make it ready for kid-friendly viewing. The designs look pretty cool. They haven't shown Allura yet for some reason. The only one to get a drastic makeover is Sven, who apparently is no longer Norwegian. He's now Shiro, and a grizzled mentor figure. Not sure why they had to do that to the character, but no doubt he'll be replaced by Allura before long, so whatever. Karan is still going to appear. No word yet on Nanny, though. I actually hope they bring her in. In the original, she's pretty much a Mel Brooks character whose only purpose is to protect the Princess Honor at all costs. It's hilarious. I wonder if they'll add the princess' little mice friends as well. Anyway, the show is set to launch June 10th on Netflix. Well, that's all the news I've got for you today. Are you excited about the return of Voltron? Any thoughts on what we might see in a standalone Obi-Wan film or Indiana Jones 5? Let me know in the comments. Until next time, this is Johnny Torch reminding you, keep the flame burning brightly, and I'll be with you again real soon.